this is cool. I've never seen a setup like this.
And it turns.
And it turns. Wow.
Thank you for being here with us, Sam.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for having me.
It's been an eventful 24 hours.
We're used to those at OpenAI, but it has been, yes, some of our top, Mira has been our CTO, and Bob, our head of research, decided to move on from the company. I'm tremendously grateful for all that they've done, and they actually both of them have been working at OpenAI full time longer than I have. I was still doing Y Combinator work, and they've gone way above and beyond the call of duty for OpenAI. They've done tremendous work, and one of the things that I love is helping to develop talented people, and then if they want to retire or if they want to do something new, I'm always excited about that, and I think that's sort of a key part of the Silicon Valley ecosystem. In addition to being tremendously grateful for them, I'm very excited to empower a new generation of leaders. Mark Chen, who's going to take over Bob's job, I think it's absolutely tremendous, and really excited to work with him. Excited to flatten out the org and get to work more closely with the other technical leaders. I have not been as involved in the tech recently as other things because there's been so much going on. I'm excited to do that, and I think this will be hopefully a great transition for everyone involved, and OpenAI will be stronger forward as we are for all of our transitions. I saw some stuff that this was related to a restructure. That's totally not true. Most of the stuff I saw was also just totally wrong, but we have been thinking about that. Our board has for almost a year independently as we think about what it takes to get to our next stage. But I think this is just about people being ready for new chapters of their lives and a new generation of leadership. You've been through a lot of change too, and I've always admired how you handle it, so I'd love any tips.
Well, our living organizations, and I think what is ultimately important is that one is able to work with very strong people, as I was fortunate to do, and so you are. And also in this room, there are former colleagues of mine who ended up working for other companies, starting their own companies, and in some ways, it's always reassuring that one has worked with people that end up being able to ultimately make and build great things.
To get to work on such an important technology, and I do think this will change something significant about how we live our lives, and it's fun to build what I think is the fastest growing tech company ever. But the thing I'm most grateful for is to get to work with such wonderful people. That has been, the density of the talent at OpenAI has been something I never thought I would really get to experience.
And there's many.
Like ChatGPT did. There's something about talking to a computer that feels so natural and easy and comfortable that I notice not only do I use it much more and get more value out of it, but I use it in a different way. There's things that I didn't even realize this, but there's things that you say out loud and there's things that you text, and they're a little bit different. And now I feel like I can have a fuller set of conversations used with ChatGPT. We're working as hard as we can to quickly bring it to Europe. There's obviously additional regulatory stuff we've got to go through, but I'm optimistic that we'll get there, and I think you all will love it. There's a lot of other products that we've been launching and will launch, but one other one I would love to mention is O1, our new model that came out a couple of weeks ago, which is focused on reasoning capability. It has been so fun to see what people have been discovering with that. One of the most exciting parts of OpenAI is we work really hard to come up with a new model. We're proud of it, but you also are always like, is it going to be good enough? Are people going to like it? Are they going to, is it going to solve people's problems? And then you put the tool out in the world, and you wait. And there's this period where people are like, it does all the stuff on these metrics, that's cool. And then you keep waiting, and then the stuff starts rolling in where you see screenshots of people saying, look what it did, or people say, I built this thing or that. And we thought before that reasoning would be a big unlock for what people can do for using AI for programming, to help with scientific discovery, which is probably the single category I'm most excited about. But to actually see it and to watch people learning from each other about how to do this, how to use this, and this new set of very complex tasks that you couldn't do with previous generation models that people are really using now, and the way that we put that into the product, the way that we show it thinking, the way that you can see kind of its thoughts along the way, that's been very rewarding. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the Search GPT, which we put out in alpha and we'll put into the ChatGPT product to make it more useful for real-time information. And most of all, I'm excited for what businesses and people are doing with these tools. It has been, I had lunch today with some entrepreneurs here using our tools for different things. Yesterday, we were at Ferrari and saw what they're doing with the tools. I think we've gone past the stage of curiosity to just people generating more value for each other in the world because they have AI. And we try to build the best products we can around that, the best APIs, the best consumer tool, but it's up to other people to then create all the value, and that's been very wonderful to see. Where you kind of get in and just talk to it. I'm really excited for that.
And it's not going to take probably that long.
Maybe you could do it right now.
Which was one of the conversations that happened yesterday.
I was expecting the conversation about voice mode, and I was expecting the conversation about using our tools to help people at Ferrari process the massive amount of data and documents you have better. One of the most inspiring parts for me, though, was hearing from designers about how they use tools like DALL-E and how they're excited to get tools like Sora and Someday 3D modeling to really enhance the creative process. And just the excitement about that I've now heard from designers in several different industries, and talking stories about how they use this to think in a better and more expansive way than they could before. I'm very excited to hear that. Maybe second to scientific discovery, that's maybe my second biggest area of excitement.
But on the other hand, I think yesterday at dinner you had the head of design, and the conversation with a scientist would have been more of a natural one, or an engineer. But the fact that you could relate with a designer who actually was looking at the tools that are being put there as a way for him to do things he wasn't even thinking that they could be done, I thought was very interesting. And I also equally believe, and that's very, very much linked to Italy and Italy's capability of trying to combine technology with aesthetics. And so there is also from designers a real interest of how the technology and engineering fits in what they do. And I feel that you must have perceived that yesterday.
It was very special for me to get to visit Ferrari, and one of the many reasons, aside from the fact that it's just this iconic company that has, I think, a brand connection with its fan base and really the whole world that just you don't see very many other places, is it really, I was very struck by the fact that I couldn't imagine that company and that way of working anywhere but Italy. And that the combination of engineering and design and passion and automotive history, seeing how that comes together and seeing you can try to explain to somebody what it's like to watch people doing their work at Ferrari, but it never would have gotten through to me. But getting to talk to the people that are sort of sweating every detail and thinking about the whole experience and how you're going to feel, and the amazing technology and the amazing design right next to each other, that was very special.
Yeah.
Really was talking about the craft of assembly, of one person assembling an engine, and why Ferrari does it this way, and what it means, and why it's better, and how they care so much about how the engine looks and sounds, and of course the performance, and how Enzo Ferrari said it was the soul of the car. And then in the very next breath, saying, and by the way, there's this bug in ChatGPT, it's really bothering me, I need it for my life, can you please fix it quickly? So that was great.
We've known each other for many, many, many years. I remember back in 2013, 14 in Mission, Pioneer Building, AI was really more of a conceptual conversation, hoping that AI did not exist. But one of the things that back then was at least important for me was to make sure that we could try and stimulate more in Italy the rate of innovation that was occurring in Silicon Valley, and your valuable experience from Y Combinator, which luckily also copying and following We have been able to put up a program now Vento in Italy, which is the largest investor in early stage. We are really happy to be here at Italian Tech Week, and a lot of things from those conversations have developed. What I think is also been always formative when we've been talking is the breadth of interest that you have. And I also feel that in some ways in the recent years, the intensity of what's been happening at OpenAI in some ways has shut down some of your other interests. And I just was wondering, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I kind of just loved whatever phase of life and career I'm in. I did love, one of the best parts about running Y Combinator was exposure to everything. And I hope we can talk about this more. One of the ingredients of a successful startup ecosystem is people working on lots of different things together and this sort of shared collisions and knowledge transfer that enables. And I think I formed such a helpful perspective on the world about what was happening, what new technologies were falling into place on the tech tree that eventually came together to enable OpenAI. And without that very broad view, from chips to energy to AI, algorithmic progress itself, to learning something about how to build internet companies, I think without all of that background and all of that view of the world, it would have been much harder to do OpenAI. But also, I'm excited when you run this broad search for a while and then find the one thing you want to pour all of your energy into. And I love this part too. So there's a lot of great things happening in the world, and it was very fun to be an investor and get to play a little role in many of them, and it's very fun now to get to play a bigger role in one that I really love. I do miss all the other stuff. I think that, in particular, the two trends I'm most excited about for the next decade or couple of decades are abundant intelligence and abundant energy, and the prosperity that we're going to get from these two things that are unlocking kind of, I hope, around the same time, is really quite remarkable. The growth we can have in the world, the increasing quality of life we can have in the world, better sustainability, better education, better healthcare, better everything. We can all build much better tools and experiences and products for each other. These are the two things that sort of became my two areas of focus, but not because I don't love all the others, just at some point if you're gonna be, really in it, you just don't get to do as much.
There's a lot of engineers in the room, and there's also many engineering activities also in Turin to address that.
Yeah. I think in the next couple of years, we will see incredibly promising demos of next generation fission and fusion. And it'll take a while to get through the regulatory process and get the bugs out of the systems, and importantly, to get them very cheap. But I believe this is a big part of our future.
So by 2050?
By 2050, I hope we're not burning much carbon in the world anymore.
So if that plays out in the way you just described, that by 2050 we'll be able to have decarbonized free energy, and the evolution of what AI will allow us, we'll be living an unprecedented growth trajectory of our world.
Yeah, to be clear, I think we already are. Think about what life is like today relative to 200 years ago, what we're capable of doing, how things that would have routinely killed us, a mild infection, we have developed the technology to, make almost a non-event. We just sort of don't think about a lot of things that people used to think about. So I think we're already in an age of quite significant wonder, but it's sort of part of the human experience, the human spirit, to always want more, want better, want to say, okay, what's next? What are the next 10, 20 years are going to be like? And I hope we make even more progress to a better world in the next 20 years than we did in the last 200. But this is fundamentally not a new thing. Like, technology has been delivering on this for, actually, so to an American, 200 years sounds like a long time. One of the things I love is the history of technology, and a special thing to me about Italy. I'm like a big nerd. Like, if I can go to a city, I will, and there's like something about the history of technology to go look at, I would prefer that to anything else.
Did you ask ChatGPT about personalizing you a series of what happened and what was invented at your end?
I didn't, but I will right after this. But I did do that in Venice earlier this year. I was there with our mutual friend, Diane von Furstenberg, and she loves Venice, as you know. And we were all like walking around, and she was telling me things, and I had, studied a lot about just sort of some of the amazing technological and sort of really societal inventions that happened in Venice. And she was telling me about them, and then she got tired and wanted to do something else. And so I used ChatGPT as like a tech history tour guide of Venice, and it was really good, really, really good. I've done the same thing in Rome too, where it's just like amazing to see what's there. But this is not a new trend. This idea that that we invent technology and it improves our quality of life in our society. If you define technology as doing more with less, or being able to do things you just couldn't do at all before, making new tools for people to use, this has been going on for a very long time.
In some ways, what we've also been observing is that there are other factors that ultimately stop these progress. And in some ways, what we have witnessed is that capitalism and the freedom that it has created has allowed a lot of development, but it also has created disparities. And we spoke a lot about how in some ways you create more alignment, where what you really want is what is good for business is also good for people.
Yep.
And we profoundly believe that. And there are different mechanisms in which you actually are able to try and find more alignment. So within our companies, we've always tried to see in which ways we can have a much broader base of our employees that are aligned with ultimately what the company is doing and the value of the company. Because more everyone participates in what the development is, the more everyone is willing to be part of it. And in some ways, one looks at the angle of a consumer saying what is going to be produced is more and cheaper, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that will be redistributed in the best possible way. And I know you've been thinking a lot about that, and we've discussed it a lot. What is your current thinking around these themes?
I'm going to butcher this quote, and I don't remember who said it, but it's something like, capitalism is the worst economic system the world has ever seen, except for all of the other ones. And I think it is our duty to continue to figure out how to improve it, but we shouldn't discount the good parts, and we should not take for granted, I think, the miracles that capitalism has produced. Again, that doesn't mean we don't really need to improve it. It doesn't mean it's not broken in significant ways. You actually touched on the thing that I think is most important, which is, at least in the US where I'm most familiar with it, a shocking percentage of the country doesn't participate in capitalism, doesn't own stocks, does not have exposure to this very long-term updraft. There's a lot of other things I think we should change about it too, but we were talking about history of technology earlier. As a kid, I studied the Industrial Revolution, and I thought, oh, there was this invention that was most important, or this one, or that one. And I really had this like nerdy tech kid view of it. And then as an adult, I at one point picked up a book and read about it again, and it was all the stories I remembered and everything I knew, but I had changed, and I had a different perspective, which is, in some important sense, the joint stock company was the single most important invention of the Industrial Revolution. The ability to coordinate the efforts of a lot of people, the capital it takes to get something invented and bring it to market, that was kind of what let us go from these very small, family-centric businesses to the kinds of inventions that brought us, this building, and eventually that TV, and these microphones, and all of the wonderful things you all are building. And that was a really important change. So I think you can't talk about the history of technology without talking about the structures and the institutions society's put in place to enable it to happen, they're equally important. They both have to happen. And so like, let's evolve the system. I've, as you mentioned, been passionate about that for a long time. We've done a whole bunch of experiments. There's a whole bunch more things we can do. We've innovated on the OpenAI structure. We've done things like fund universal basic income studies. But let's not lose this magical engine we've had.
I appreciate you saying that. I think in any place with such a rich history, it's tempting to look back and be proud. And the thing I love about you, and many other people here that I look around and see that I know, is just this relentless drive to look forward and say, we're only as good as our next thing. We're gonna keep going, we're gonna keep pushing and driving progress. I think this is a very special time to do that. I think technological revolutions like the one that we're lucky enough to be witnessing right now with AI don't come along very often. Maybe it's like an every couple of decades thing. And this is when the most new creative energy is possible. This is when new industries, great new companies get born. In a career, you may only get a couple of moments like these. And I think I love the startup energy always. I think that this is a time to really go for it. This is like, you know, this is the time when the earth is shaken in some sense. The normal rules of who can succeed at what are suspended, and startups have an incredible edge because they can move more quickly, they can iterate faster, and that's so rewarded when there's this level of dynamism. I would love to see Europe and Italy in particular really embrace this. I think it's not easy. I think it requires economic change, maybe regulatory change, societal change. There's all these things about Silicon Valley that work really well.
But assuming nothing of all of this change, you still see incredible capability of people doing things despite all of it. Do you believe that?
Yeah, people will do, I mean, it's human nature. People are gonna do incredible things no matter what, but the degree of success, I think, is a factor of the environment. But this is a great sign. Like, this didn't happen a decade ago, and this is the kind of change that I think needs to happen to form a community. Like, in my own thing, my own life, one of the most important things that happened to me was the early Y Combinator startup schools, and being in rooms like this. The speakers didn't matter, but just meeting the other people. And those connections from almost 20 years ago now are still some of the people that I text regularly, I'm super close to, work with directly. Forming community, I think you can do so much more than an individual startup could just go do off on their own. So I think things like this are super important.
Because I think, Sam, that would...
The first thing that came to mind was specificity versus non-specificity, or definite plans versus like very vague plans. And if you're trying to do a very hard thing and it's unproven, like maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. But if you have like, here are the reasons I believe this, here's the tests I want to run, the data points I want to get, what would make me believe with more or less confidence, and here's my next step and the one after that, and you're sort of putting one foot in front of another, I think that's ambition, whether or not it works. And if you're like, there's gonna be this great future, and all these things are gonna happen, and then someone says to you, great, what are you gonna do tomorrow? Or what's next, or what do you need to like learn to verify or disprove this hypothesis? And there's sort of like a lot of hand waving but no answer. That's more in the delusion category.
Let's avoid that.
Yeah, like one thing I have learned again and again in my career is just the value of putting one foot in front of the other.
Baby steps.
Learning fast, making mistakes, but making them with baby steps and just correcting your course over time. That single recipe, I think, is the surest path I've seen to success.
We're leaving out of time. We had questions from the audience and from founders. One, to start, I'll start with you, John. AI is going to disrupt or impact industries. AI is going to impact most traditional industries in the next couple of years. It already started. How can companies start now to adopt new strategies to adapt now rather than be late in a couple of years?
Well, I think awareness is ultimately the most important. And the more you're aware, the more you'll be prompt to adapting. And what is the most important thing in my view is what we were discussing before. Just leave yourself as an organization the latitude that a lot of the things that some of these new technologies are going to allow you and AI is going to allow you, you don't know. And it doesn't matter. But just be open to what you'll be able to invent and create without knowing it now.
Thank you very much. And do you think there is a kind of a team to build around you? Do you think there is kind of talent to bring to companies today?
There's talents of everywhere. I think it's really not constraining yourself of what is possible.
Okay, thank you. And Sam, for all the founders that are building, we have a lot of founders in the room today. A lot of them are building at the application layer. What are you most excited about? What should they focus on right now? What are the biggest problem that you would want them to start solving?
I always reverse that question on founders. One of the things that amazed me most about YC is the degree to which the best founders have ideas no one else does. And if you're asking someone, what should I build? We all get deprived of your own intuition. So there's lots of amazing things people are building, but we need it from you. The way, again, talking my book, I'm like way too bullish on startups. I believe startups are like this critical ingredient to the world, but I really do love them. And the thing that we saw again and again is a founder with an idea that we had never quite heard before, that was bold, that was ambitious, but as John was saying, was specific. That's where the magic happens. And if you have one of those ideas, don't ask somebody like me for advice.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.